Hello, and a very big warm welcome to the Soul Sync podcast. I'm Jason Paul. Now, if you're clicking on this podcast for the first time and wondering what the Soul Sync is all about, well, let me tell you. We ask the questions here that matter about all things to do with spirituality, the spirit world, the soul, energy, healing, astrology. Honestly, the list really is endless, but it's all designed to nourish your soul and illuminate your path forward. And if you're joining us again, welcome back to the Soul Sync family. It's lovely to have you here as always. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to be talking to Nancy Duval, who is the author of the title Whispers from Beyond. Dealing with the loss of loved ones can be an overwhelming journey filled with grief and uncertainty, but through her personal experiences, Nancy Duval offers us a beacon of hope. A reminder that our loved ones may be gone from this world, but they're never truly lost. In her touching story, Nancy shares how the profound loss of her husband and sister led her on a journey she never expected. Through listening to the whispers of the spirit and observing the signs she was given, she discovered a newfound path, a path of connection and healing. As a mother, wife, daughter, sister, aunt, first-time author and medium, Nancy wears many hats. She was born in Toronto and raised on the shores of the Georgian Bay. Nancy's journey has been marked by profound loss and a profound spiritual awakening. Her transformation from grief to spiritual calling is a testament to the power of resilience and the unbreakable bonds between the physical and the spiritual worlds. Through her work as a medium, Nancy serves as a bridge, a connector, bringing us closer to our loved ones and the divine. So join us as we embark on a journey of discovery and connection with Nancy Duval. Through her story and her gift, she reminds us that even in our darkest moments, there is light, and even in our darkest grief, there is hope. So I hope you enjoy this week's episode. So, Nancy, a big welcome to the Soul Sync podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This means so much.
So I've been really excited to bring you onto the show. And I must say, when you were coming on today, I was so excited because your book's just recently come out and we're going to kind of talk about all of that. But we just talked through a bit of your story in the introduction, but your story is a really interesting one and it ties into the book. Tell us about you and how you come to be on this spiritual path, because I know it's a really touching story.
Okay, yeah. So it was a difficult journey to start. I think anything spiritual, when you start, is a very sort of you start the path, I believe, with a lot of trepidation, and it's very nerve-wracking. But my story kind of started in 2013 when my father, we had a strained sort of relationship, but he ended up developing cancer, and we amended our ways and we reconnected, and I was able to be with him the last couple of years of his life, and he ended up passing away. And I got signs from him. And, I always believed in mediums and spirit, but, never really thought much of it. So I would get signs from him. And one day I was driving to work and I heard his voice in my head because I was almost in a head-on collision. So I listened to the voice and I moved. So I didn't think much of it after that. And then it was about 12, 13 months later, I lost my first husband of 22 years. Right. He passed away very suddenly. And I started getting signs from him almost immediately. And again, I wasn't ready to even start or even think. I went to a medium. They gave me a beautiful reading. It really helped me. It offered me such peace and comfort in the grieving stage. So much so that it almost catapulted me ahead in the grieving stages that there are. So it was a wonderful reading. It was just so touching. Then I guess 2019, I lost my only sibling, my sister, in a head-on collision. She was killed instantly. She fell asleep behind the wheel. Oh. And immediately I started getting signs from her. And these were signs that were just hit you on the head, pay attention signs. Um, I think it was like 3 days after her accident, I heard her voice, and um,
Wow.
it kept coming to me, and I thought I was having a breakdown. And I ended up speaking with a family friend who was a medium, and she was actually a minister in a spiritual church here in Canada. And she advised me, "You're not having a breakdown." She says, "You're starting your spiritual path, and now it's up to
Wow.
you if you want to take this road or not." So little by little, I decided, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to take it. So I little step by step, and then I started getting into it kind of deeper and through research. And here in Canada, it's hard to find um, spiritualism isn't as out there, if you will. Um, so
Yes.
here in Canada, it's a lot different. And I'm from a small town in Ontario. So there isn't the spiritualism side of it. If you're new and you don't know anything about it, trying to find somebody to connect with, to put you in the right direction or put you on the path is very difficult.
Why do you think it's, I know that we're kind of spoiled in England because of it being a religion, but why do you think there's such a lack of, even in Canada, being able to kind of find these people or groups or connect with?
I really don't know. It's like as if it's better now because I noticed that there's more spiritual fairs, holistic fairs, that sort of thing that you can go to. Um, but when I started out, it just seemed like I was very much alone. Like I couldn't really, and anywhere, any of the spiritual churches,
Mhm.
they were like 45 minutes to an hour and a half away.
Oh, wow.
But I feel right. Um, since now my circle, I now have surrounded myself with like-minded people, as you do.
Yes.
Um, I notice now it's becoming more in your face. Like people are more accepting. It's not such a taboo sort of subject anymore. So
Mm.
there's more resources, like your podcast, for example. Like you would see things online, but you in like America, you see like the famous mediums walking the streets and stopping people, and there's one that's in a cab and people get in and he's doing readings and that sort of thing. And like it's and people are ooh ah. But yeah, if you're just like a small town girl growing up in a small town, it's very difficult to try and find those like-minded people. They're out there, but they don't wave a flag and, I'm here type thing. So,
And so these experiences you went through were really painful and profound. And it sounds to me that that's really what kind of drove you towards your mediumship. How did you develop that in the circumstances of being? How did you even go about trying to find people? But how did you develop it?
so it's a really funny story. I after my sister, her name was Rachel, after she was killed, I sought out people, and I managed to find a spiritual church in Ontario. It was 2 hours away. A minister had put me in contact with that group, so I had called them, and they had two world-renowned mediums from Scotland coming.
Oh, wow.
They were booked up, but I pleaded my case and said, "Look, I think this is what's happening. I don't know what's going on. Could you have space for one more, please?" And they said yes. So they put me in. And I don't know, can I say their names or?
Oh, of course you can. You
Oh,
can say
okay.
anything you
Okay.
like.
So it was Carrie McLeod and Philip Dykes.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so I went, and they were in Ontario. So I went to them and I did a course with them. It was a weekend sort of retreat, and it was very intimidating. I felt very weird kind of going in, because we're sitting down on the chairs, and it's all in the book. I'm sitting in the chair, and all these other people are standing up, and they're, oh, I'm a psychic medium, and I'm this type of medium, and I'm this, and I'm that. And it comes to me, and I stood up and I said, I don't know what I am, and I don't know if I'm going crazy, and I don't know, but I think spirit is working through me, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was during a break, Philip came up to me and said, you know, he's got this a beautiful British accent. He said to me, he goes, no, you're not crazy. Spirit is working. You just need to fix that, and I said, okay, I would be interested in doing some learning seminars and sessions. And so I tutored under Carrie and Phil. And COVID hit, so it was great because everything was on Skype. So it was great. So I did a lot of one-on-one sessions with them, and they kind of helped me through it. Now, in the book, I did change their names a little bit, just because I didn't know if they would want to be known or not or what, but I did change them. But yeah, they were instrumental in kind of, and they resonated with me. They really, before they agreed to tutor me, I kind of looked at what they stood for. The Arthur Findlay College, I kind of, reviewed that and went into that. And then I read up on Gordon Haynes, and it just kind of snowballed. And it was like, okay, what they're talking about is really resonating with me. So I figured, you know what? I'm on the right path. Excuse me.
And when you started to go on that journey, it sounds like it started to really take pace and unfold quite quickly once you were under the right tutors. And
absolutely, it really snowballed, and it went quickly. I tried to do it on my own, but when you're doing it on your own, you pick up like a lot of bad habits, if you will.
What sort of bad habits do you think you pick up if you're trying to do it by yourself?
The number one is, I think your ego gets in the way. And because you haven't been professionally trained, or you kind of realize that, you know what, you're not doing this to service you're doing this to serve the spirit world. And I think that gets lost a lot in translation. And I think with a lot of people that do mediumship work, if you're not careful, that overplays, and that comes into action, because you start getting noticed, and you're like, oh, this feels great. Well, you know what? You're not doing it for you. You're doing it for the spirit world, right? And I think that kind of, you got to keep that in check.
Hey there, fellow soul seekers. Are you feeling the vibes of this episode swirling through your auric field? I know I am. But before we dive back into this enlightening conversation, I want to take a moment to chat with you. If you're enjoying the deep insights and soulful discussions on the Soul Sync, then I want to invite you to join our community by hitting that subscribe or follow button. And by doing so, you'll never miss a beat, and you'll be supporting us in our mission to spread positivity and spiritual growth. But wait, there's more. Your feedback is invaluable to me, so why not take a moment to write me a review, share your thoughts, ask questions, and let's spark some soulful conversations together. And who knows, your review might even be featured on the show. So let's keep the energy flowing. Subscribe, follow, leave a review, and let's continue to grow and evolve on this incredible journey. Thank you to all of you for being part of the Soul Sync family. And I guess that I guess I can see how people maybe fall into that trap as well, because I think sometimes I'm just grateful to be getting a spirit connection, let alone any intention in terms of what to do with it. Sometimes I'm trying to, the amount of times I've sat in the power and tried to throw my third eye over my head and not knowing what I'm doing in order to get a spirit connection. How did it, because it sounded like before you kind of were at the point where you started to get tutored professionally, you were having a lot of experiences and sensing a lot of things. And it sounded to me like you were very sensitive to certain things.
I was, especially after my sister went into the spirit world. I found that all of a sudden I couldn't be around people, especially like large crowds. I found I would get very overwhelmed and I would have a hard time not breathing, but I felt very tight. I felt like as if something was pressing on my chest. I'd be overwhelmed, at let's say like a movie theater, or if we went to like a birthday party, or I would just feel like it was too much. It was like crushing. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was picking up on everybody's like auras and energies. And I was walking around always on because I was kind of doing this on my own and I was sitting in the power. But I didn't know how to shut it down.
Right. That makes sense.
Excuse me.
Not at all. So, how did you learn how to manage it? Was it through the tutors that you had that you kind of...
Yes. Even I remember a session that I had done. It was a week's course with Carrie and Phil, and I remember we had done, we broke out into our own rooms on Zoom, and we were doing readings. And again, and this was early on. I was doing a reading with somebody, and it was like after the reading, because we were only allowed, I think it was like 10 minutes or something. And I could have kept going and going and going. And after we broke back into our group, I felt like, again, I couldn't, like, it was still there. Spirit was still with me. And it was like, and I was having a hard time trying to shake them off, if you will. And Carrie had sent a message and she said, take a deep breath, like shut it down, like take a deep breath. Like you have to learn how to kind of control that. So yeah, it was a real learning curve there, because I think a lot of times when people delve in and they don't have that professional training or training with somebody that knows their stuff, you're always on. It's hard to shut it down.
As you've kind of been developing as a medium, have you kind of had any profound experiences along the way of doing this work and pivotal moments where you could share with us, where you've gone suddenly?
Oh, my goodness, there's so many.
I'd love to hear some.
I've got tons. I do a little segment on my Medium Facebook page, and I call it "I Can't Make This Shit Up."
Oh, yes, we love that kind of stuff on the Soul Sync.
Yeah, because there's so many. But as you know, like spirit works. So the best way I can describe it is when you're doing your mediumship, like, okay, I may be working this way now, but then all of a sudden spirit says, nope, we're going to, you've worked really hard and you've done it this way. We're changing it. You're going to have to learn this different part. So then, they change it. And now you're like, oh my goodness, now what? So you kind of have to rely on your other senses. So the first, when I started practicing, because I would practice on my friends and I was practicing on different people and groups. And I remember the first time spirit came through to me, and it was kind of, this scared me. We were just sitting around and we're just talking or whatever. And I said to my friend, would you like a reading? Because I sense spirit. And he was like, absolutely, I would love that. So I said, okay, well, I described the situation, and all of a sudden I almost dropped to my knees because I felt like my throat closing. I felt like as if somebody was stepping on my throat. And my new husband came running at me, and I'm like, nope, just hold on, let me figure this out. So in my head, I kind of was like, okay, please back up, which the spirit did. And that was the first time I had the sense of how spirit passes, this gentleman, this spirit that had come through, had actually committed suicide by hanging. So that was like very new to me. And it was like, oh my goodness. So now I know how that feels. I kind of know now when I do readings, if I get that tight feeling in my throat, it's got something to do with this sort of area. Because I don't see spirit. I do everything the hard way. I don't see spirit. I don't see pictures. I hear and I feel. So I have to keep going in and feeling how spirit feels, if that makes sense.
Well, I can relate to that because I think that I'm all. I think that I have the same Claire as you do because I'm all feeling. I feel things, whereas. And that's sometimes, you know, that's been quite a bit of my mediumship journey's been trying to learn not to compare myself because when I've been to the college, I'm thinking, why am I not seeing it? Why am I only feeling it?
Exactly.
And I think I just had to realize that feeling is my superpower. It feels like. So tell me about the book then. Well, firstly, it's a massive accomplishment to have a book. I've thought many times myself, I'd love to aspire to do that. And the amount of commitment it takes to kind of go on that journey is incredible. Your book has been very well received. What was the motive behind writing the book? What inspired you to start on that journey? And it must have been painful at times to, recount this.
Well, so this also is a funny story. When my sister passed away, I went to see a respected medium. And she told me that Rachel was saying I would write a book. And I'm like, I will not. That's never going to happen. Well, during COVID, I penned a couple chapters and I would put it aside and that was it. And this year, we have a caravan, a trailer. And I was sitting by our caravan and trailer. They've got this beautiful pond. And I go down there and I sit in the power. And this morning I was sitting in the power on the swing and I heard a ruckus behind me. And I turned around and this deer was like 10 feet away from me being chased by a coyote. I don't know if you have coyotes in England.
No, we certainly don't. I can tell you that.
They're like a wild dog. So I took that as a sign. So I went back and I was like, I'm going to write this book. So I sat down for the month of June and I wrote most of it. And then I had my family from England. My cousin came from England for 3 weeks and 2 weeks or 3 weeks in July. So I took a break and I finished it off. And I just sat at the trailer and I wrote my heart out and I'd sit outside and I'd be typing away. And it was therapeutic. But it was also very difficult because I had to bring up a lot of feelings and I had to sit back and really think about it. And, when you lose somebody, your human side kicks in and brings and conjures up all those feelings again. But then your spiritual side kind of kicks in and says, well, you still can see them, like not see them, but you can still feel them and talk to them. They're still with you, just not in physical form. So yeah, it was a very emotional sort of journey. And what I really wanted to do was get the story out there. And I wanted to kind of incorporate how I survived and how I dealt with the grief and I journaled, and the laws of attraction are in this book. Gratitude is huge. It was very therapeutic. And the people have been emailing me and messaging me and texting me and saying, I read your book and it's like your book is like my story. Everything you said or you're doing, I've done. And, your book, it's changed the way I see my spirituality. It's wanting me to start my own path. It's also helped me come up with some coping mechanisms for dealing with grief. So I figured, what, if I can help one person out there, I've reached my goal.
I absolutely love that. I think that's such a good motive, and already to be receiving this kind of feedback from people is it must be healing for you as well to be kind of hearing that.
It is very healing, but uh, it's very healing. But you know what? When I wrote the book, I said to my husband, because I since remarried, I remarried my high school sweetheart.
Oh, what
And
a lovely
yeah,
story.
and I told him when I wrote the book and I was looking for a publisher, I said to him, I said, you know what? I said, my spirit family is telling me this is going to be big. This is going to help people. This is like they're telling me that, whatever it costs, whatever you need to do, get it out there because
Mm.
whoever's going to read it, they're really going to connect and it's going to help people. So I said, I need to do this. And my spirit family, my dad, excuse me, not so much my dad, but Bob, which was my first husband, is always with me. My sister's always with me. And my protector, Menson, is always with me and they always guide me and put me on the right path. So
That's
they're a big part of this book as well.
why what how has gratitude been so important to you throughout this journey? Because it's something that we've talked a lot about on this podcast generally. But and I'm always really keen to hear about it because I do think gratitude is life changing, if applied in
Oh,
the right way.
absolutely. Yeah.
How has that helped you?
Oh, it's changed my life. Being gratitude and just being grateful. It's life changing. It's life altering. And I think years ago I read the book and the movie. I saw the movie The Secret. Um, which touches on the gratitude and the laws of attraction. But for me, I really started practicing it when Bob passed away because there were days we had a 15-year-old son when Bob passed away. And there were days where I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I've lost my best friend. I've lost the only man really that I've really loved. I was with him more than half my life and he's gone. He promised he would never leave me and he left me. And it was very hard to find gratitude. So I started journaling and I made it a point in my journal, at the front of my journal, I got a old book from the dollar store. I don't know if you have dollar stores in England.
Oh, we have a similar
Yeah.
equivalence.
So at the front of it, because I was so deep in my grief and I wasn't sleeping at night, I would write letters to Bob.
Mm.
And some of the letters, they were beautiful letters. Others were sad and others weren't very nice because I was mad. He left me.
Mm.
And then at the back, I decided every day I'm going to write down 3 things I'm grateful for. So point form, I wrote down 3 things. And I remember this one day, I remember writing down, I was grateful that I had toothpaste because it was on my list of things to buy and I kept forgetting. And I got up that morning and there was just enough to brush my teeth. And I
Mm.
was grateful for that. And then after a couple of weeks, I noticed that I wasn't sitting in the grief as much. I noticed that my outlook was starting to change. And I noticed that I really appreciated those smaller things in life, like sunrise, a hot cup of coffee, or, a really good steep tea. Like I was appreciative more. And I found the more I was appreciative of the little things, greater things seemed to bounce back to me.
Mm. It's even to be able to. I've only ever lost grandparents, and I can't imagine the level of grief to lose a partner. But even to be able to implement that a week after, I think that's I couldn't imagine personally being able to do that after a
It
week.
was,
So I think that
it
must
was
be a testament to you.
yeah, it was a difficult time, but when Bob had passed away, before he left, I had promised that I would take care. I promised him it was okay if he had to go, and I promised that I would look after our son. So when it's just you, it's different. But when you have a child that's also grieving and that you're responsible for too, you do things that you would never think you could do. You
Mm.
find the strength, whether it be from spirit or your religion or family, or just you dig deep and you find what you need to carry on.
Mm. You mentioned journaling being something that it sounds like you implemented quite early, and that became quite a significant practice for you. And it sounded to me like that very much kind of was uncovering a lot of your gifts or helping you to at least get the foundations of your story out there.
Oh, absolutely. I started journaling, and I've never journaled prior to any of my spirit family going into spirit. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, no, I started journaling, and especially when I started sitting in the power. I sit in the power. I try to sit every day. It doesn't always work out because life does get busy. But I try to sit in the power every day. And the first thing I do when I come out is I journal. And again, I write about connections, how I felt in the power. I write about if I feel any connection, any conversations I might have had, what it was like, any colors, that sort of thing. And then I always put underneath, I've made it a habit of always put three things that I'm grateful for. And then I always put after my mission sentences, if you will, which is basically my manifestation sentences.
Oh, I love that. And do you find that the manifestation sentences you put do you look back at them and go, hang on a minute, that's come true, that one?
Absolutely. They do. Yes, they do.
I love the idea of keeping a soul journal, and it's something we spoke about a few episodes ago on the Soul Sync, because I think that it allows you to really start spotting those synchronicities more and more and more. And I found that since I've started writing down my dreams, I just can't stop having more and more crazy, vivid dreams. And I'm finding that even my soul journal's getting very, very, very full every day because the more I write, the more that seems to um, occur. Where, in terms of sitting in the power, how did that kind of evolve for you? How did you, because it sounded like you were having those experiences quite a lot, and then through sitting in the power, it kind of really made them step up in pace quite a lot.
Oh yeah. Sitting in the power. So I've explained to people, the difference between meditation and sitting in the power, because
Hmm.
for me, it's two totally different things. Um, I originally started meditating, which then led me kind of into sitting in the power, especially training with Phil and Carrie. I learned to realize the difference. But in the beginning, when I sat in the power, I would get bombarded by messages. I would hear things, I would sense things, I would, yeah, it was like I was an open port, if you will, like an open door. And I would just
Mm.
get like, I had past life experiences and I had people coming in and I had a little girl come in which was lost and I kind of led her to the light, and there was all this going on. As I want to say matured, and as I continue my practice, I went through another phase where I would just see colors. I would just see like vivid reds or different shade, which would mute into different shades of reds and purples and
Mm.
blues and that sort of thing. Lately now, lately now, when I sit in the power, my spirit team always comes forward, and I feel them around me. And then I just kind of feel the best way to describe it is cobwebby.
Oh.
So I feel like there's cobwebs like on my face, sort of. And then I feel almost like spirit is working on me somehow. Like they're working, like I feel like as if somebody's massaging my eye area and like my cheeks. And so it's ever changing and it's ever evolving, just like our gift. It's always changing. It's never the same. It's not a concrete, it's always fluent. So
Mm.
it's always changing. And that's the way I feel spirit is working right now with me. I've taken a break from doing readings. I did very little readings in the summer because I was concentrating on my book. And then since my book has come out, I haven't done any readings or any practice readings, although I've been sitting in the power. So now I'm going to start back up in May doing some readings and that sort of thing. So I think Spirit is kind of working with me and evolving again on what I do and how I connect to Spirit.
Wow, that's so interesting. You said that through doing this, you felt past life experiences.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about those?
Yeah. So it's really funny because I didn't believe in past life or because I think as a medium, I just want to say before I go into that, before as a medium and as you start your spiritual journey, I think it's important that you take bits. So if you're training with somebody, you take bits from them, what resonates, and you build on that.
I agree.
So you don't take their word for verbatim what they say, whatever. You know,
don't give your power away.
That's right. Exactly. Thank you. So I met somebody who has kind of been my guru, who I have called, and she's in the book as well. And I used to tell her all my, my can't make this shit up moments. And the one day I was sitting in the power, and I don't want to tell you too much because it's in the book, but I had this little boy come to me. And I'm looking at this little boy and I'm looking at his feet. And as I'm looking at his feet, it's like I'm looking down at my own feet. And I realize they're my feet. And the little boy says to me, follow me. And we're running. And he's in this period sort of stable outfit. And we're running. And we ended up running through the forest, hopping little streams and trees and whatever. And we end up in a cave. And as we enter this cave that's in a mouth of a hill, there was like a collapse, and I'm stuck now in the cave with this little boy. And not to give too much away, but this little boy died in my arms. And just before he took his last breath, he said to me, "This is how we die." And I snapped out of the power. So I called my guru, as I call her, and I said, "Oh my goodness, you're not going to believe this." She says, "What now?"
Oh, it sounds like she gets these calls quite often, Nancy.
For me, she did in the beginning. She would be like, "What now?" So I told her, and she says, "So I want you to go back into the power, and I want you to try and reconnect, and I want you to try and see if this little boy comes forward." So I was like, okay. So the next day I sat in the power, and sure enough, it happened again. This time when we were in the cave, we were more in detail.
Yes.
And I found out his name was William. And I thought, oh, okay. He was a stable boy, and it was somewhere in England. I don't know where, but it was somewhere in England, and it was like from a long time ago. And I found out the wall collapsed. He died. He said the same thing to me. And I came out and I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, oh, cool, William. So I thought that's probably how I died in another life. Well, it was a couple weeks or months later, I went to my mom's, and some of her friends had a grandbaby or something. We got talking to babies. And my mom had said, if you were going to be a boy, your name was going to be William.
Wow.
So I was like, oh my goodness.
Goodness.
She says, yes. She said, I had William picked out if you're a boy and Nancy if you were a girl. So
what an interesting story.
Yeah. So there's all little tidbits like that in the book. So
it sounds to me when you're doing this, it sounds to me when you're developing, it almost sounds like you're getting new features in your mediumship regularly. But I guess I find it really interesting when I interview mediums, because my mediumship is obviously in a totally different place to yours, and we're also individual.
Absolutely.
And I find it so interesting when I hear that you're sitting in the power experience. It's always a moving, evolving. You're doing different things, but you're going into it with To me, it sounds like this really is your passion now, and you go into that with such an open mind and an open heart.
I think that's really important. Like when you go, I'm not gonna say yes every time I sit in the power I have this earth-shattering, revelation. I don't. There's other times I'll sit in the power and I can sense spirit, but it's like I'm just sitting there and I come out and I'm like, well, I have nothing to write in my journal today because nothing happened. So it's not always earth shattering or anything, but I find anytime that you end up sitting in the power is not wasted. Even if you're not ideally if you can do an hour, great. But even if you can't do an hour, if you can at least just sit there and just let spirit do what they want to do and just sit there and just acknowledge and go in with an open heart. And I always start with a little prayer. And I just ask my spirit family just to come forward, protect me and be with me and love me. And whatever happens. There's no expectations today. It's just whatever you think I need, let it be.
I think that's a very good approach. Nancy, what advice would you give to people then? That we have a lot of people, obviously, who listen to the Soul Sync, who are all interested in mediumship, spirituality. What advice would you give to individuals on their spiritual journey from your, own experiences and what you've been through yourself in unfolding your mediumistic ability?
Oh, you know what? I think the hardest part about starting your spiritual journey is, first of all, you need to believe in yourself. You really do. Because there's times even now I'll do a reading and I'm like, did I actually do that? Did I actually I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe and that brings doubt and that lowers your vibration. So it's harder for spirit. So I think you need to go in wholeheartedly, but also I think you need to lower your expectations. So if you sit in the power, right? It's great because I've had that formal training on how to sit in the power, but that doesn't mean that I have to follow it. It doesn't mean that it resonates with me. I can sit in the power, but the expectation changes.
Yes.
Right? And I think that if you're starting out, it's very important to journal. I think it's very important to take that time for you, and it's a thing that can't be rushed.
I agree with that totally, because I myself, I think, was rushing very much at the start. And
that's because you're excited. That's
it
excited.
is because I'm excited.
Yes.
Obviously, the first time I got a reading right, I suddenly was, wanting to throw my hands up in the air. And then I just couldn't do it for ages afterwards. So I always think that this journey is not an easy one. And
no.
What I've tended to find through knowing mediums is I think all of us normally seem to come into this off the back of some awful trauma, which then unfolds the gift. I'm yet to come across any medium that hasn't had that kind of pattern of events. We're made of tough stuff, Nancy. That's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly.
So do you know what? It's been such a lovely conversation, Nancy, and I'm so excited to see where your book goes. I think it's going to touch the heart of so many people. And your book is available from Amazon. I would say to people to, if you want to really have your heart touched by what is, a truly remarkable lady, then do go on to Amazon and order that. You. Nancy, it's been a delight. Thank you so much for coming on to the
Before we go, I just wanted to mention too that I just found out today that it's now available on Kindle as well. So
there we go. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be an audiobook, Nancy, because I must say, if we could have you reading it for us, I think that'd even go one step further.
That is a possibility. That's something that I've had a few people reach out about, just because they've, especially like people that have difficulties reading and especially the print. So we've done it in the Kindle, so you can adjust the font size. But yeah, the audio, I'd like to maybe look at that too in the future.
Oh, I would. Do you know what? I love a good audiobook. But honestly, thank you so much. It's been a delight. I've loved having you on here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
A big thank you for joining me on another enlightening episode of Soul Sync. If you want to stay in the loop with the Soul Sync podcast, it's easy. Simply hit the follow show button wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. If you want to get involved in the conversation with our community, as well as hearing from me with off-podcast content, look at the bottom of the show notes where you'll find my Facebook page and newsletter function. If you have suggestions for future episodes, or perhaps there's a guest you'd love to see featured, or you might even have a story you'd like to share with our wonderful audience, simply email me at hello@jasonpaulmedium.com. Your stories and ideas are the heartbeat of Soul Sync, and your input is invaluable in shaping the soulful conversations I bring to you. I'm Jason Paul. You've been listening to the Soul Sync. Until next time, goodbye.